Hey there riders, Journo Kris here today with the Honda CL500. I wanted to take a look at the ergonomics of this bike because while it is a scrambler, it's actually based on a cruiser, and that is very much reflected in the overall ergos of this bike, which makes it very, very beginner friendly. However, the flip side to that is for those who want a real scrambler machine, it's probably not quite at that same level, but let's jump on and have a look. So one of the things I will mention, very, very narrow bike. It's very narrow at the tank. It's quite narrow at the engine. There is obviously this case which jumps out quite a way. But apart from that, very low seat height, nice, easy reach to the ground. It's going to be great for shorter riders, for women riders who are looking for an easier to handle machine. And obviously cruisers are a great entry-level bike because of the low center of gravity and just the way they're designed, and the CL500 carries that into a scrambler theme. So when I don't have my feet in the right spot, I do tend to kick that little engine case there, but generally speaking, it's quite a relaxed, easy thing to ride. Again, kind of more cruiser than naked bike, but I think that works really well for people who are interested in a really kind of fun, relaxed, cruiser-styled entry-level machine. Easy reach to those bars. It's not too much of a reach forward. I found the upright sitting position is very neutral, confidence inspiring, makes it very easy to ride this thing, and obviously to jump on as a new rider. So if you're a new rider considering this bike and wondering about seat height, I would say it's a very inviting seat height. It's quite a bit lower than most of the naked bikes and certainly most of the other scramblers, which is a great thing for you. And then you've got a little touch of kind of the scrambler side of things, on top of being a really relaxed, easygoing machine that has a lot more of that cruiser vibe going for it. The dash isn't the clearest if you're getting any kind of sun or reflection onto it. It's probably one of my one criticisms. Very, very simple controls though, so you're not going to be getting confused about what's going on. Easy to use indicator and horn, which is important. And yeah, generally speaking, it's quite a basic machine, but it does everything well as far as I can see. Probably for some people, they'll go in and have a look at that little Rebel 500, see the CL500 next to it, and I wouldn't be surprised if they like the styling of this package a little bit more, and as a result, they grab one of these. And from an ergonomic perspective, I think there's a lot going for this bike in straddling that cruiser and scrambler segment quite well, and kind of bringing the strengths of both. With, I guess, on the scrambler side of things, it's more styling realistically, because while you do get a bigger front wheel and some dual purpose tires, they're not going to detract from the overall ride. And again, when it comes back to kind of the ergonomic side of things, because it's nice and fairly long and low, you don't feel that weight, and it's a much more manageable machine, which is, yeah, a great thing for a machine for the new, the short, the experienced riders who just want an easy laid back machine. And of course, really for anyone, I guess you'd say, at the end of the day, who likes this style of bike. Okay riders, so following on from kind of that, I guess, ergonomic side of things, let's have a little bit of a look from my point of view. Very, very narrow tank, which obviously is kind of, I guess you would say, one of those features of the bike. It is quite narrow. It's quite narrow, and that does come into play for the ergonomics. While the tank is a little bit taller, it's got a much lower seat, and that seat feels quite a bit narrower. Also, as you can see, hopefully down through here, the bike is fairly narrow, perhaps not the most narrow, because it is based on kind of that cruiser design. They've kept the weight low, as I mentioned already, and it's kind of long and low, which gives it a nice low center of gravity, which, while not specifically an ergonomics thing, does make a bike easier to handle, and is one of the reasons why I tend to say, and some cruiser people may disagree with me, I think cruisers are probably the easiest style of bike, and also generally have the lowest seat height as well, which again plays into that with the low center of gravity, low seat height. Obviously the bars are a little bit taller, which isn't unusual for a cruiser style machine, because we do have kind of that low at the back, taller at the front kind of style, and obviously that kind of works with the bigger front end as far as the bigger wheel for a scrambler. I'm not going to say that I think this is the kind of bike that from a scrambler perspective is going to really be out there jumping sand dunes and big rocks and things like that. You can see the ground clearance isn't enormous, and obviously the suspension setup It's a little bit tweaked for the scrambler theme, but it's not fully kind of into that area, which isn't surprising because that just generally doesn't seem to be the case on any of these entry-level scramblers. We'll jump on. It's quite easy for me to throw a leg over. I'm 180 centimeters. I've got a 32-inch inseam, so I'm on the leggier side to, you know, add that little clarifier, because your height isn't the only thing that comes into play. I do find kind of grasping onto the tank, those little leg pads, because they're more leg than knee, work very, very well. Just give you something to grab a hold onto. Again, looking down at the tank, very, very narrow. There's not a lot of bike in front of you. And honestly, for me, jumping on this bike feels like quite a small bike, even though one of the complaints people had about the machine itself was how heavy it is on paper. It's not something that I feel when I jump on the bike. And then it's a nice natural reach to those bars. They're not too high, they're not too low. They've got a nice little bit of bend back towards the rider for that more natural kind of position. Obviously my hands are a little bit wider than my shoulders here, as you can probably see. Hopefully the GoPro's capturing that. And then it's a very upright kind of seating position, which is the norm in the scrambler and naked and even cruiser style of bikes. Obviously it's not a sports bike, so you're not really canted forward. I imagine if you were riding a bit harder, you might get to the point where you're getting in a little bit more and kind of having some fun. But I find it a more relaxed machine, as I said already, and that works really well. No adjustability on the forks, preload on the rear, no adjustability on the levers, which I feel like we're getting to the point, especially because the 500s from Honda are a little bit more premiumly priced. I think it's hard to not have, or hard to excuse not having adjustability on those levers. It probably adds $1 or $2 on the production cost of the levers, although there is not a lot of room, at least on the brake side. And yeah, so you're not looking at a lot of adjustability, just preload on the rear. So if you put a pillion on the back, you can kind of wind that up a little bit, and that'll probably do the job, but there's not a lot of adjustability otherwise on the bike itself. But yeah, I think it's a pretty cool thing, and as I've already said, very, very beginner and entry-level friendly, even though it has a slightly more powerful engine, and that's kind of cool. Other thing to note, keys on the side here, which is a little bit different. More cruiser again, so that's quite normal for a cruiser, and a little bit more unusual for a regular style bike. So let's just make our way out here. It's a pretty easy thing to ride in these kind of conditions as well. Obviously we're taking it slow, but yeah, the kind of honestly the cruiser style ergos and the dual purpose tires, they make this kind of like slightly rough stuff pretty easy. As a new rider, it may be a little bit more of a challenge, just because everything's a little bit more of a challenge, but personally, if you ask me, I think it's a nice kind of compromise overall as far as offering all those things. You're not going to be standing up on this bike all that much, because obviously you're kind of crouched down, as you can see here, towards the bars, and the seat is a little bit low to grasp onto. You can kind of do it with your knees, but you're certainly not going to be spending a lot of time standing up on this bike in that kind of adventure style, which for some people they might want. And I guess, well, I don't think that's the norm in this category. I think if you go up to the Triumph, I think it's like the 1200 Scrambler, so what used to be like the Speed, the Scrambler version of that, obviously there you're getting a more full bore Scrambler with proper off-road suspension, whereas I think most of these entry-level options are more of a basic kind of Scrambler look with a couple of tweaks to suit that whole dynamic. And as a result, you're probably looking or thinking of this bike much more as you would think about a cruiser, with some dual purpose tires and then some styling tweaks in comparison to, say, the Rebel 500. Anyway, if you have any questions about this bike, let me know in the comments. As always, stay safe out there. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon.